Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Faster Masters Rowing Radio, the show dedicated to helping masters have more fun, fitness, and enjoyment out of their rowing. I'm Rebecca Caroe, and I'm joined by Marlene Royle.
Hello, Rebecca, and hello to the Faster Masters Rowing Radio audience.
And as you can see, I'm not in my regular studio today, so you'll just have to bear with me as the sun comes up and the light gets better, and you'll then hopefully be able to see my face. So I am down in Dunedin in the South Island of New Zealand because this week is the South Island Masters Championships. And so I'm down here because I'm racing thanks to the generosity, firstly, of Cambridge Rowing Club, who are doing composite crews, and secondly, Otago University Rowing Club, who are doing loaning us some boats and generously allowing another club to use their trailer so that that club can take our boats on their trailer to the regatta. So go figure.
Wow. So how far is Dunedin from Auckland, Rebecca?
2 hours flying, probably.
Oh, so you fly down there? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big distance.
Opposite ends of the country. Yeah, it's probably, I don't know, 800 miles or something. Yeah. So we flew down yesterday, and the regatta. It's a nice regatta. Unlike the North Island Champs, which is run on a multi-lane course, the South Island do it differently, and they move around from club to club each year. So you're rowing on different waters, and their regatta takes the form of a long distance race on the first day, which is usually 5 to 8K, only in quads and eights. And then you pack up, usually that's at a different venue, and then you pack up your boats and go to wherever there's a side-by-side regatta, which is on the next day. We're going to be racing down the Tairi, which is the name of the river, and we're going through the Tairi Gorge, which is a particularly beautiful scenic part of the country, which, despite having lived here for 2 years, I've never actually been down the gorge part. I've been on different parts of the river. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we're going to Lake Wahola, which is a lightly tidal inland lake. And the weather forecast is good for tomorrow and for the weekend. So unlike today, where it's raining and windy and doesn't look very pleasant.
Right. Hopefully it'll be better in the gorge. But that, I think that's interesting. And for those listening at different clubs, it's so interesting when there's different racing formats. I mean, that's something we talk about from time to time on Faster Masters Rowing Radio, but having these creative formats, and this reminds me a little bit like the Heineken Regatta in Amsterdam, right, where they raced a sprint, and then they race a 1K, and then they race a 5K, and so the winner is the accumulation, whoever accumulates the most or the least points, however they count it. I don't remember exactly, but whoever has the best performance over all three events is the winner in the events. And it's all, in this case, bigger boats. I believe it's all 4s, quads, or 8s, so they don't have small boats. But I think it sounds like a really fun format. But racing in one club one day and then going to another club the next day, it's a little bit like Tour de Ski and Nordic skiing, where each day they race at a different location, but sometimes they're actually changing countries, like from Italy to Switzerland to the Czech Republic to France.
Wow.
And they do it over 12 days around Christmas time.
Wow, that's quite something. I like the idea of traveling and then having some fun, really different things going on.
Yeah, they're different events, sprint events, and then there's a marathon, and then there's a 10K, and then there's a team sprint, and it changes every day. So I think I think it sounds really fun for rowing. You've got to train to be able to be good at all three events.
Oh, you do. You definitely have to. Yes, that's exactly it. It's pretty good. And they always have a holiday weekend. This is called Queen's Birthday Weekend. So Monday is a holiday. So they always have a very big Sunday night party as well.
Yeah, well, here in Canada, we had the Victoria Day last weekend, named after Queen Victoria. So it was our holiday weekend last week.
And in the UK, they've got a special extra holiday now for the Platinum Jubilee of Her Majesty, which is it's going to be splendid. There
Yeah,
are street parties and all sorts.
It's a 4-day national holiday, I think.
Yeah. Our government haven't given us an extra holiday for the Queen, sadly.
I don't know if they haven't. I don't think they have given us an extra day off in Canada, but they are streaming like the whole big 4-day event. Starting at 5 a.m. live on Saturday. So
yeah, Canada was the first Commonwealth country where the Queen is no longer the head of state, is she?
No, the Queen is still the head of state.
I thought maybe it was just the medal system, because you have the Canada Medal instead of having MBEs and knighthoods and things, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have to go and look that one up.
Yeah,
I used to work for a Canadian charity called Families for Children that ran an orphanage in Bangladesh, and the woman who founded it got the Canada Medal, Sandra Simpson. She was an amazing lady, incredible vision and energy. And I remember being told about this and understanding that Canada had slightly separated itself from its British history, I suppose.
Well, in the Canadian passport, it says that you are a subject of the Queen.
Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong about that.
Right. Maybe we're still in.
maybe we're still in. Yeah, we can dream. Now, the topic we've picked for this week is fundraising. It just seems very topical because as people who listen regularly know, I offer a concierge service where I can answer any questions that people want to put to me. And it's just a short Zoom call. And I have had several recently where people have come through and asked questions that are relating to raising funds for clubs and or growing club membership. And so we'll do membership recruitment another time. But for fundraising, it's a very particular area because, like most sporting societies, most clubs run on a reasonably tight budget. There are various pressures on what you spend your money on, and some organizations can apply for grants and loan funding, and others are just dependent on dues from members, membership subscriptions, and so on. So I thought we'd just spend a little bit of time today just talking about fundraising in the context of overall running a club. Now, I want to kick off with the beginning piece is really about your club strategy. If you have not got a clearly stated strategy for your organization, fundraising is really hard to do because there's no context. I'm not going to go into detail about that now, but we have done episodes in the past about setting a strategy first, and that's really important because the strategy sets the expectations both for the members, but also for what members are expected to do. And if volunteering to support fundraising activities, obviously that's got to be part of it. Otherwise, people won't be supportive of your efforts. Where I come from in the UK, club fundraising was done mostly in the form of running regattas, and most clubs ran a winter and a summer regatta. The winter regatta would be a long distance race of some variety, and the summer regatta would be a side-by-side event. And most clubs managed to do this literally on the water, plumb outside their building. And they were accepted whatever they were. You didn't need to have a particularly straight river. You did need to be able to get at least 2 boats side by side and with enough room for a return lane. So in the UK, there are local regattas which go round corners, some of which have staggered starts because the bend favours one lane over the other. There was a conversation on Twitter with Phil Simmons last night where he was saying, I remember Hereford Regatta, and Hereford, glorious cathedral city in the West Country. And I also remembered Hereford Regatta, but my memories were somewhat different than his in that I remember you started with 2 boats side by side, and there was a bridge after around 300 or 400 meters. And you had to get to the bridge first because there wasn't enough room under the bridge span to have 2 fours side by side without them hitting each other.
Yeah, so you're racing for the gorge, right? Or for the bridge.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and your club does not yet run a regatta event, do look at it as a sort of linchpin of fundraising, because if you can run them locally, just for local clubs, think about how you might structure the regatta to appeal to the membership in your geography. So what I mean by that is, if people might be prepared to travel to your club, but you want to have a regatta at a time when their trailer isn't available, could you organize a regatta where you provided the boats? Go and have a look at the memberships of the clubs nearby. Are they mostly high schoolers? Are they mostly masters? Because an awful lot of clubs nowadays have juniors and masters and not very much in the middle. Could you run a regatta for kids in their first year of rowing, where they're not yet considered good enough to go to the multi-lane events? So there was a very successful regatta run in the south of England that was deliberately for children under the age of 14, and they ran it as a get some experience type regatta.
Mm-hmm.
It was only ever in coxed quads. The boat stayed on the water, the kids swapped in and out. If you didn't have enough children for a boat, the regatta organizers would find you an extra one or two. And secondly, there was another regatta we used to do, which was at Pangbourne, where it was in singles, but it included skills. So the kids
Mm-hmm.
did little races. They had to
Mm-hmm.
then do a turn your boat on the spot in a circle, and you got timed. They had various other little skill drills that they had to do to get, an accumulation of points. So a regatta, think of it as more than just straight lane racing. Have you ever attended any of those, Marlene? Sort of fun events?
No, I've never done anything like that. And but I like the idea of even skills competitions. Like, honestly, years and years ago at the women's colleges like Wellesley or Smith College, a long time ago, they had women's rowing. They were some of the first women's colleges in New England to have rowing, and they didn't race in a straight line, but they had style competitions. So they actually had competitions where, like figure skating, where you were graded on your entries, you were graded on your rhythm. Granted, this goes a ways back. However, possible, right? Also something, I mean, if you want to just create a fun event or something to attract people from your local area. For example, the Maine Rowing Association years ago ran summer head races, which in the East Coast of the United States, there really aren't summer head races. So having some summer head races to go to were quite fun. And they used to do one called the Maine State Championships, where you race this 5K course, but you were racing a triangular course. So you're racing around 3 buoys. So the start was, again, the finish. Once everybody finished the 5K race, they would row up to another start line and do the killer meter. And so as soon as everybody finished, everybody who was in the race, this was mostly singles at that time, would then row up to another start line, and in like one big wave, they would race 1,000 meters down. So it was kind of like a 5K plus a 1K. So that, again, another racing format. But I think just being creative, thinking of it in terms of what kind of rowing event might we hold on the water that we can attract clubs from our nearby area. Like, for example, Community Rowing in Boston started the CRI Classic, which is a race that's held in late September, on the Head of the Charles course. So that tends to attract a lot of people from the New England area who are planning to row the Head of the Charles. Now, it doesn't have the buoys up exactly like the Head of the Charles, but you're still, start line and finish line are in the same places. So, that's a good example of a race that can help you get ready for another race. And Riverside Boat Club holds what are called the Head of the Kevins. and there's three of
Oh, yes,
them.
I've heard
There's
of
three
them.
of them before the head of the
Mm.
Charles, and they're I believe that they're invite only races because they only have a certain number of people that they can put down the course at one time. But you seed yourself according to time, and then you row. You know, the fastest start first, and then they basically race a time trial over the head of the Charles course. But hopefully, if you seeded yourself correctly, you're among people with similar speed who are competitive with you. But again, that's a self-organized regatta by Riverside Boat Club that started many, many years ago. That has become a very, people want to be able to get in if they've got to know somebody at Riverside Boat Club, right, to get in. But that's another event. I don't know if there's any entry fees to that race, actually. But if you made such a race a fundraiser, something that builds into a bigger event that might be held in your area is also a good idea.
Yeah, on the Tideway, I know that Thames Tradesmen used to have the Yannisek Fours, which was before the Fours head of the river race, and similarly, Tideway Scullers used to have the Tideway Scullers singles head before the Scullers head of the river. One of our British watchers is saying Hereford is a great straight course. There's enough room through the bridge. Clearly, I was a beginner rower and they were having me on, and I fell for it, and I've believed it to be true all these years. Super regatta, great visibility to watch racing from the bank. Granted, there are head courses in the UK where you cannot get through bridges side by side. That is definitely true. So if you want to raise, you can raise several £1,000s, dollars, whatever your local currency is, by running a regatta. There is no question, particularly if you add on food, drink if it's allowed, and raffles and things around it. It's definitely worth it. If there are local organizations who might like a trade show tent, they don't have to be rowing businesses. We've had them. There's the tiny house movement. There was an organization who brought a tiny house up one time because they thought that people who went to regattas were the sort of people who maybe wanted one of those in their back garden. So definitely worth doing. It is work, but it is also a super fun thing to do, particularly with something that is non-standard. Here in this country, racing has got more and more standardized into straight lane racing, and there are fewer and fewer of these alternative, slightly less traditional races. And my belief is that, particularly for masters team up well with juniors for regatta purposes. So it allows you, if you wanted to do parent and child racing, or to do adult and junior racing, to do a lot of masters are parents, so they're bringing their kids to the regatta anyway. If the boat club is bringing a trailer of boats, putting a couple of extra boats on for the masters, is not a big inconvenience. So I do commend you to look at having something, a small friendly, even if it's just your local clubs just in your area, and treat it as an extended training session rather than a regatta per se, and with a small donation to participate. I do commend you to look at that as a good start for fundraising for a club. Moving on to other kind of little things. A lot of clubs like to do kind of little and often fundraising. And these are the sorts of things that will make you a few £100s or dollars, but which can usefully be used to offset small repairs, buying replacement oarlocks, shoes, the things that wear out in your boat, maybe putting petrol in your towing vehicle. I have been in clubs where they had a separate bank account for regatta entries, and they charged us 20p or 50p, which would be $1, for putting your entries in. So that there was, they were making very small increments as a sort of service fee. And they said that was, that paid for the maintenance on the trailer over the year. What other small things have you been in?
Well, I think, honestly, little things like if you live somewhere where there is a return on bottles, for example.
Oh.
People bringing in their bottles or their cans that have deposits from home, and that money, that money going into a petty cash fund, because say you have deposit bottles that are worth 10 cents or 15 cents over time, and if the whole club kind of donates those bottles to the petty cash fund for the club over time, that again, that's another thing that can add up. It's maybe $1 here, $2 here, but if you have a very, very large club and you have a deposit and you have some part of a volunteer duty is someone takes the bottles and cans to the depot and then cashes that in, that can be a small little often type of a project that could work to cover some of these petty cost funds.
We used to have a lost property box where people leave clothes all around boathouses all the time, and once a year, they would say, right, take all your gear, because we had a drying room as well, and they said, remove all your gear, otherwise it's going. And someone would take them home, wash everything, and then sell them. And so I remember walking around the club and seeing a young lass wearing a pair of my leggings, because I clearly
Right.
forgot.
You forgot that those were there.
They looked better on her than they did on me, so that was fun. But it was a nice small fundraiser, and some of the members of the club who had more clothing than they needed donated their clothing, for the kit sale. And it was quite funny because we had people who had rowed internationally, so you'd see these teenagers walking around in leggings that were way too long for them, and they tucked them into their shoes. But
well,
they said Great Britain, on the leggings.
Yes, or having, for the club members, for example, having something that is, do you have objects and things that you don't use anymore that we can sell at a rummage sale? Or say these days you could sell those things on an online site, and the proceeds could go to the club. I think it's probably even easier now, but that could be a spring and fall event where people clean out their closets and donate objects, things that could be sold, and then the proceeds again go into a fund for the club. This is a little fundraiser, but things like that can, if you've got a few things like that, they can add up. Things like your classic, your bake sales and cookie sales, but those are those tend to be a lot of work. Depending on people's connections and how much time they want to spend with it. But I think something that's an ongoing thing that just becomes a little bit a part of the culture of the club. Okay, well, instead of recycling something here, it's going to go to the club sale, and it becomes a habit.
We did one of the best fundraisers we ever did for our juniors was to hold a junior disco. It was for under 15, so you had to be at least 12 and less than 15, so it's very tight age group. And we would get a DJ in. We would get the older juniors to staff the bar where they served non-alcoholic multicolored cocktails. Tickets were £10 each, and we'd have a couple of parents on the door who would check tickets. And then the kids would sell tickets around their schools, because at the club I was at then, we didn't have any schools as part of the club, and the juniors who rode there came from a lot of different schools, and that was a really successful event. And we'd run them 2 or 3 times a year on a Friday night or something. I mean, it became a really big thing for local kids to go and meet other kids and get dressed up and have a dance and stuff. So that was good.
Well, one thing, I think raffles honestly can be quite successful for rowing clubs, because oftentimes it may be difficult to get a cash donation from a local business or sponsors, but most of your local businesses or other rowing companies are often willing to donate merchandise. And if you run a raffle that your members sell tickets to the raffles, or tickets are available online, with a little bit of effort, I think you can approach a number of rowing businesses and they will often be happy to donate a gift certificate for something, or clothing, or parts for your boat, for example, like maybe oarlocks or something like that. But I think you can
Totally.
usually, almost every time I approached a rowing company, back when I was a competitive athlete, raffles were one of the main fundraisers that I did, and I would contact many rowing companies, and honestly, every single rowing company was willing to do something, whether it was donating a t-shirt or clothing or a gift certificate or books or all different types of things. And I also lived in Vermont, so Vermont had a lot of products, Cabot cheese and Green Mountain coffee and gift baskets, and excuse me, they would donate these things for raffles.
That's a really, really successful thing, and definitely worth doing, and echoes my own personal experience, where I did a raffle for a regatta a couple of weeks ago. Exactly the same thing. People were incredibly generous, offering to re-sleeve blades. That was a really good prize. Yeah. Now, our sponsor today is King Kong Bags. Fitness is a journey, and we found the perfect companion for every step of the way. Imagine a seriously tough training partner that's guaranteed to keep you on your game. You'll never skip a session, is always there to level up your motivation, and will even organize your life and hold all your workout gear for you. Meet King Kong Bags, the toughest gym bags in the game. You can drag them around, pack them to the max, and take them on the toughest of adventures with confidence they aren't going to rip or stretch. All King Kong bags are decked out with all the pockets and compartments you'll ever need. We're talking shoe compartments, laptop sleeves, multiple bottle pockets, wet zones for your towel, pockets for your gym accessories, meal prep storage, and even a unique weightlifting belt attachment. If you take your training seriously, you will need a serious gym bag too. Ready to pack for greatness? Take their quiz and let the pros match you to your perfect gym bag, and you'll also score a $10 off discount. Just head to knkg.com/rowing chat. Not convinced? Buy it, pack it, take it to the gym. Let's get chalk all over it. And if it doesn't live up to the hype of being the #1 gym bag of 80,000 plus fitness freaks around the world, return it for a full refund. No questions asked. Make sure you use knkg.com/rowing chat for our exclusive $10 off discount. Back to fundraising. There are two more specific fundraising types which are quite good earners. The first is a learn to row, particularly an adult learn to row, because the opportunity to recruit as well as teach people is great. I have found that we can charge $300 a head for 6 sessions. It seems to be roughly the going rate for sweep or sculling. And at the end of it, out of every 10 people who take part, 2 or 3 may be interested in joining the club, and the others really were genuinely just there to learn, to experience it, maybe, to say it's a bucket list thing that they've now ticked off. And so I've learned not to be disappointed when people don't want to continue with the group. But learning to row is a very good thing if you live in a town that has either a local radio station or a local newspaper or a free newspaper that people read. You can advertise it, because people will only travel a certain distance for something like this. We are considering, there's a big office park not far from where our club is, like it's a walk, not a drive, and we're considering approaching the tenants in the office park, to see if they might like to do it, because being able to do some exercise at lunchtime, in the summer, that's quite pleasant. So people don't have to get up early. They don't have to sacrifice their weekends. That maybe this could be a weekday thing. but regular learn to row classes are the lifeblood of every club. There are very few clubs, usually the very high performance ones, who can afford not to offer a learn to row. And it's if you can ring fence your target audience, sorry, speaking marketing speak here, it makes it more appealing. And a particular audience that I commend you is the parents of the junior rowers. So children who are already rowing, do a special learn to row just for their parents. I've just completed one of these, and the nice thing is that they all know each other already. So there's not a lot of getting to know you and anxiety about who will be on the course with me. It's like people will go because their friends are already going. So I just think it's brilliant. And if anybody wants to get a good structure for how to organize those sessions, buy Volker Nolte's book Masters Rowing. There is a whole chapter in there written by his co-author Wolfgang Fritsch, which explains the exact process he uses to teach sculling, and you could easily adapt that to sweep. So I definitely think that's a good place to start. And now a subgroup of learning to row, which is corporate rowing or rowing for team building type activities. There's a very enterprising man in our club who started a business doing this. And he started by teaching it to the MBA students at the local university, because team building is, part of corporate life. And so he took an entire class of MBA students out in 3/8 on our local lake, and total top. Take my hat off to him for having the genius to see that was a really great captive audience, because the university paid, the people participated because it was part of their course, and a good learning experience. And I know that there are professional organizations that do things like one-day corporate rowing challenges and things like that, but I've also heard from a club in Invercargill here in New Zealand who run an annual corporate rowing event, and it's a reasonably small town. 200, maybe 140,000 people, so it's not a particularly big place. There are 2 town rowing clubs, and one of them runs the corporate rowing, and it's not exclusively for beginners, it's for anyone, and they get a very large number of participants. I've heard that they get up to 30 crews entering from different businesses in and around the area, and they do it in early spring leading up to a one-day regatta, which is just for those participants. It's not part of a bigger regatta, but it's a very, very good fundraiser for their club. So the thing that I think they get so right is they get the young people in the club to, each of them is a coach manager for each of the corporate rowing crews. And the crews have 10 people in them so that they can allow for absences and so on. And for their part in agreeing to coach them, these people get a substantial discount on their membership dues for the year, which I can see that as being quite appealing, having several $100s obviously in payment, but also it's deliberately netted off against your club fees.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And if you live in a city where there are a lot of potential businesses, for example, I mean, imagine in some place like Boston that you could start a corporate rowing league. Actually, I mean, your club could start a corporate rowing league, and in St. John's, Newfoundland, where they have the Regatta Day in August.
Yeah.
That is sort of it's rowing, but it's a little bit non-traditional rowing because they race 6s on Regatta Day. However, the model would work for something like this. You create a community you could create a community rowing league, corporate rowing league, and the different businesses might have their teams, and you have somebody to coach them, and they train for an event at the end of the season. So that is something that could definitely, you could organize practices, and there's definitely some work involved. However, as we say, it can be quite a good seasonal fundraiser for introducing rowing to new people, or and if it goes from year to year, you're probably going to develop businesses just like you would baseball teams or football teams or soccer teams. You develop local leagues, basketball teams, and then different companies have leagues. So I mean, rowing is definitely well suited for something like that, especially with eights. And I think that could be quite a good fundraiser, and kind of leads up to a fall event or an end of the season event.
Paul Webster says Mosman Rowing Club in Sydney, Australia used this model and it works great. He says, however, a corporate key backer is key. That's really good to know, Paul. Thank you. Really appreciate that. So one of the things that I'm thinking, that if you are going to do a corporate rowing thing, you don't have to just do it alone in your club. If there is another club in the region, do it together, because then you can share the equipment. This club told me that they needed 6 eights to run the regatta, because their river can allow 3 boats to race side by side. So 3 are racing and 3 boats are on the bank, switching a crew out and a crew in. And I thought that was quite an important thing. To know that you need enough equipment. Back to Paul, who says Mosman used the corporate regatta model, but sustaining key corporate clients are key, and a diversity of corporates will ensure longevity. Paul, great, thank you. That's really clear and really helpful. And I wonder if you guys are going to be doing it again in the spring this year, after COVID obviously stopped us doing a lot of these fun additional things.
Yes, and aside from something like corporate rowing or learn to row that the club runs, look at your membership, talk with your membership, and find out what resources they have, because perhaps one of the members is the owner of a restaurant, or perhaps someone owns a theater, or perhaps somebody owns a space where you could sponsor a particular event. And I knew we were going to be talking about this today, and in our local magazine that came out, it's a free magazine, there was an article about our library that is going to be, they recommend a certain book of the month, and in this case they've teamed up with the local theater, and they're going to be staging this book on stage, in a few months' time. And then so this play of the book that the library is sponsoring is going to be staged at a local theater, which is serving as a fundraiser for the new renovations of the library. And as I was reading that, I thought, well, that's an interesting idea, because clubs that have many members, especially adult members, often have businesses. Does your club have a space that it can rent? I mean, this is a big fundraiser for clubs. If you've got a large area or a large room, that could be a banquet room. I mean, if you have a kitchen off of it for caterers to work from, that can be a substantial form of income for the club to rent the space for banquets, for special events. If you're on a scenic river, weddings, so if you're designing your club and if you're going to build a new boathouse, think about creating a space that looks over the river, is a very nice setting, because that can become a very important fundraising space for cocktail parties, for banquets, for weddings, for any type of special events, and something that the organizers of that event can bring in caterers and they have a kitchen to work from, to deliver food and clean up. But that is something significant for a club that can really help sustain a club. And you mentioned looking at what your local resources are. Government grants, depending where you live, your province or your state may offer certain types of grants for certain types of sports activities. And I know in Canada there are a lot of national and provincial types of sports funding programs that are matching grants, or are grants available for a club that serves this age
Community.
group. Yeah, this age group or this community, and they can apply for a certain amount of funds to help them buy equipment that can be used for equipment. So you may, depending where you live, your state or your province may have different types of grants that are available. And as you said, even if it's a $500 grant here and there, or a matching grant, it could be something that buys you a set of oars, or something that services the motor, or contributes to a new launch. But all of the expenses that clubs have.
Going back to your thing about the resources of the members, the best one I ever heard of was, do you remember when the TV show Glee was quite new? The lead actor, she was the woman who was the sports teacher, who was kind of a bit nasty in the show. She was a rowing parent, and this rowing club did the most marvelous variant of a raffle, and it's you make up a lot of envelopes, some of which have prizes in them. So it's just a bunch of envelopes, and they drop it from a great height, and then people run to snatch the envelopes and have they won something. And this woman did it out of a helicopter. So not only did you have the celebrity appearance and autographs and things like that, they also had this raffle drop from a helicopter run by this hosted by this Glee actor. And so definitely do ask your community, because I have in the past, one of the kids I used to coach, his godfather visited one day just to see him rowing, and this guy was a Hollywood actor in the Star Trek series.
Oh, geez.
Oh my goodness, like, if we'd known that his godfather was this Hollywood actor, we might have been able to get, I don't know, some memorabilia, and like you say, and put it onto an online auction site too. Anyway, it was definitely worth asking, do you know anybody famous, or have you got any resources? And going back to your idea about using the club rooms, obviously you need to tidy out the ergs and the gym equipment, but rowing clubs nearly always have a fabulous view, and they're very good for corporate offsites. And so when I was in London, we definitely have hosted businesses who wanted to go somewhere and have private meetings for a whole day, not in the office. Paul's still watching us. He says, great shout on venue hire. Designing so the events happen without impacting training is really useful. Dropping out, but final comment, he says, movie nights are great. We just did Maverick and it was cracking. Finally, rowing waters tend to make great triathlon courses. Paul, you're my man. That is fantastic. They can make fundraising opportunities as well. Well, thank you very much for joining us and for those great ideas. Yes, I've definitely seen triathlon, open water swimming, being a newish sort of sport. Definitely worth looking at all of these things. Talking about movie nights, we did a variant which was in the UK. Everyone is very keen on rugby from January through to March, and it's the Six Nations: England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France, and Italy. And so every 2 weeks they have an international game, and it was usually on either a Saturday or a Sunday. And what we used to do was bake a whole load of potatoes, make some chili sauce, not chili sauce, chili con carne to go with it, and we'd put the rugby on the big screen, encourage people to stay around after they had finished their rowing, and just have a meal and enjoy watching the match together. and we actually had a bar as well, so we were able to open the bar for alcoholic drinks as well. But that was great fun. But Paul, before you go, I want to know, if you watch Maverick, what is your call sign? Because I watched it and I've decided I am Vixen, just in case anyone wants to, give me a new alter ego. Fantastic. I think we have really nailed a lot of different fundraising ideas today for rowing clubs. Don't forget, if you do want to sort of check in and ask specific questions about your own situation, we have the Faster Masters Rowing Concierge service. It's at our website, fastermastersrowing.com/concierge. You can book a 20-minute slot to talk about the challenges that you're facing. And we have talked to people about things like club strategy, about things like learning to row, about things like fundraising. And we've also talked to individuals about their own personal challenges, someone looking to find an accountability partner, someone facing some mental health challenges but wanted to work through them using rowing as their mode to work through them, someone else having a little bit of a political battle inside their rowing club. And we don't claim to have all the answers by any stretch, but we do have a lot of experience and we can sometimes make some suggestions. In fact, a good one recently was someone who had a medical condition and was seeking out other people who had the same medical condition. And so we referred them to the Masters Rowing International Facebook group, where they put their post up, and there were several other people who were able to both either offer advice as medical professionals, but secondly, people who had experienced the same condition and had some advice to offer in the context of going into that particular thing. So again, we're a community, self-evidently, and we really hope that you can make use of the wider community for things that are happening to you in your life, because rowing is very much an ebb and flow sport. Sometimes things go easily and sometimes they just don't go so easily. And I think that's where having a like-minded community of friendly folk from around the world may be helpful.
Absolutely. Could I add in one last fundraising thought before we sign off? Just little thought. Think about little catchy creative things. For example, if your club, say you're going to do a mailing for fundraising, think of things like, we need to buy a new set of oars. Each oar takes 5,275 strokes per year at our club. Would you, and we need to raise this much money. Would you sponsor 5 strokes? Would you sponsor 10 strokes? We need to raise money for a boat. This boat will be rowed X number of times, which is going to cost us $32.35 per outing at the club. Would you sponsor one outing? So that could be another direct mail strategy. If you have a mailing list that you use for fundraising, that ask, could you sponsor one outing for this boat to go out on the water for the club? And look at little things like this where somebody says, yeah, we sponsored the row on May 26th, and we sponsored the row on July 4th, and we sponsored the row, because sometimes, again, that's one of those little often type fundraisers that appeals to someone that, wow, I sponsored the senior women's 8 to go out and practice on August 6th. So, that might be something that people say like, wow, I did that. And maybe you invite the person who sponsored the crew to row that day to come out in the launch. So, if you're kind of sending messages out to your fundraising audience who may not all be members of the club, that might be another way to entice them to support the club and feel like they're taking part in the club, and sponsor a crew for a day, or sponsor 5 strokes of this oar for this year, something like that.
I've seen that done with buildings where you bought a brick. Same idea. Yeah. Well, this has been Faster Masters Rowing Radio, the show dedicated to giving masters athletes fun, fitness, and friendship through our mutual sport. It has been a delight having you with us, and till next time. Bye-bye.